So we're gonna finish up Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, and introduce the Aeneid, Virgil, two very different types of works. And so let's just pause for a second on the Tao Te Ching, the Tao, which is like the unnameable way, the kind of source of all being, behind all being, pre-existing pre-being. And in this one, we could have chosen almost any of these, but here's the one that expresses this idea of not trying to control, not trying to dominate. The Tao is always at ease. It overcomes without competing, answers without speaking a word, arrives without being summoned, accomplishes without a plan. And what I'm trying to say here, I'm trying to focus on here, is this Wu Wei, non-striving. And I don't know Chinese, so I'm just going off of my own study of this. So if someone knows Chinese better than me, please correct me. But as I understand it, there's this sense of non-striving, of not controlling, of letting it be, let it flow, let its natural grooves. This is kind of a groovy idea, like thinking about the 60s idea. It's yeah, let the grain of the wood flow its grain, as in like the grain of the wood. And I was looking at this book. This is the book from our friend, sorry, it's too big for this, The Matter with Things by Ian McGilchrist, Our Brains, Our Delusions, and the Unmaking of the World. It's a pretty big book, as you can see here. And in this book, he does bring in Taoism. And so let's take a look at what he says here, quoting the Tao. This is not something that we've read. We just read a little bit. This is a really, it's like, I don't know, well over 1,000 pages. And here he's saying, viewed as a guiding pattern that lies behind phenomena, yet importantly without controlling or predicting their expression in any one instance. Li, that's another Chinese word, Li, has many of the same qualities expressed in the idea of the élan vital. I don't know much French, but it's like a vital spirit, something like that. It is the creative core of existence. Lao Tzu says of the Tao that the underlying nature of order, natural order of the universe, the great Tao flows everywhere. To the left and to the right, it loves and nourishes all things, but does not lord it over them. This last phrase is important. In other words, it does not control, force into conformity with its will, direct or have power over what is essentially free. And so, yeah, just emphasize this aspect of the Tao, which is to not control. And this is going to contrast with the main thrust, I think, of the Roman culture, at least the dominant form of Roman culture, because Roman culture did have some aspects or some movements which maybe were more in line with this Taoist, more non-striving approach. But we're going to see with the Aeneid and with Aeneas that it's about the will. It's almost Nietzschean in its emphasis on this hard, unbending, determined will to control, to dominate. And what did the Romans do? They controlled and they dominated much of the Mediterranean world, most of the Mediterranean world, most of Europe at that time for hundreds of years. Now, there's a certain sense in which it wasn't just that, but anyway, um, in the ideology of the Aeneid, yes, we will see this. So let's go ahead and transfer into the Aeneid from Virgil. And I guess I'm going to do this. Let's set the tone by doing a song. And this is actually a song not about Aeneas, but about Ulysses. And it's called The Tales of Brave Ulysses. And I unfortunately had a string break and I haven't had a chance to fix it. So anyway, we're gonna have to go without that one. And so here goes nothing. You thought the lead in winter would bring you down forever, but you rode upon a steamer to the violence of the sun. And the colors of the sea bind your eyes with trembling mermaids, and you touch the distant beaches of the tales of brave Ulysses, how his naked ears were tortured by the sirens sweetly singing, while the sparkling waves of calling you to kiss their white laced lips. And you see a girl's brown body dancing through the turquoise, and you footprints make you follow where the sky loves the sea. When your fingers find her, she drowns you in her body, carving deep blue ripples in the tissues of your mind. Tiny purple fishes run laughing through your fingers, and you want to take her with you to the hard land of the winter. Her name is Aphrodite, and she rides a crimson shell, and you know you cannot leave her, for you touched her distant sands with the tales of brave Ulysses, how his naked ears were tortured by the sirens sweetly singing. Tiny purple fishes run laughing through your fingers, and you want to take her with you to the hard land of the winter. So that is Cream, and let's share screen for a second and look at those lyrics. From Tales of Brave Ulysses, 1967, and Eric Clapton and Cream, and it's not the Aeneid, but it's the same story. The Aeneid is largely modeled on both the Iliad and the Odyssey, which were the great Greek epic poems of heroism and adventure and monsters, and the hero making his way home. And so Aeneas is kind of on a similar Odyssey. And so here Ulysses, which is another name, is actually the Roman name for Odysseus. Ulysses is there on his journey, and but it's also about us. You know, you thought the lead in winter would bring you down forever, um, and then you see Ulysses. He's looking at the mermaids, and his naked ears were tortured by the sirens sweetly singing, and so there's this tension of desire and duty, and so Ulysses um, blocks up all the men's ears with ear wax or some kind of wax so they can't hear except himself, but they tie him to the mast of the ship so he can hear the sirens. So he's just going totally nutso with desire. So you have this image of intense, passionate desire, out of control, while the sparkling waves are calling you to kiss their white laced lips, and it's also mixed in with this kind of drug atmosphere of the 60s. And you see the girl's brown body dancing through this orchestra. So here's desire. And we're going to see Ulysses, we're going to see Aeneas is going to be tempted to stay in sexual union and marital union with Dido. So it's kind of a parallel story. And like is getting carved deep blue ripples in the tissues of his mind. And so that's kind of like, I guess, the thinking about the patterns of the universe and the patterns in your mind and the kind of correspondence there. At least that's the way I look at that. And then I don't know what these tiny purple fishes are, but they're running, laughing through your fingers. And you want to take her with you to the hard land of the winter. Because I guess, you know, he's in a warm place and you want to take her north well, in Odysseus' case, it's to Greece. And in Aeneas's place, it's to Rome. So, so let's turn to Aeneas and let's get some ideas down here to set the tone. And I'm going to go to the drawing board here and say a few things about the setting. And so, and I didn't check the dates, and I can check them in a minute, but essentially, you have, well, let's just do a little timeline here. You get the year 0, which is the traditional date of the birth of Jesus Christ. But right around the same time, you have the beginning of the Roman Empire. And actually, it's a little bit before because Julius Caesar, gosh, when is he killed? So Julius Caesar he becomes the first kind of dictator of the empire, but he gets killed, and then it's his nephew, I guess, is Augustus. And so Caesar Augustus becomes the founder of the empire, or at least, I guess, the second guy in the empire. I'm sorry, I just wrote empire. I meant to write Augustus. And so I'm trying to do too many things at once here. And I really need a swig of water. Let me take some water here real quick. And so the story is written at this time, just before, I mean, in these years before the year 0. And Virgil was a Roman, and he's a poet, and he doesn't get hired, but basically he's the propaganda guy, for Augustus, justifying Rome's power and its power grab, because it essentially takes over so many other countries. And so, let me pause this for 1 second, make sure I want to turn the sound off. Okay. And so, getting back to my screen here. Yeah, so one of the things that's going on with these stories, I've been talking about the mythos, the story, the narrative, the background, the worldview, sometimes tied to religion, and in this case is very much tied to religion, which is also tied to politics. and very much so here, because this story is, in this poem, was used as a kind of propaganda tool. Think about like war movies or patriotic movies, or movies about that sort of celebrate certain values like Braveheart and liberty and freedom, or the Band of Brothers, these various films, or Saving Private Ryan, or these are kind of propaganda films. That doesn't mean they're bad, but they're definitely pro patriotism. In our case, pro West, pro USA. In this case, pro Rome. And so, and it's hard for us to realize how big this poem was for really the last 2,000 years. It's still big, but I mean, I think it's kind of lost its luster a little bit because it doesn't get taught as often as the Iliad and the Odyssey. I don't know why. I guess because it's not as old. But I think it's better, personally. It was written later, so it's got more development to it. But yeah, so we have this background. So let's dive into the poem itself. And I want to lay out one of the key values for the Romans is duty, sometimes linked to the word piety, pietas in Latin, which is kind of like being duteous and faithful and patriotic to your country. And this is the key virtue, the key value that's held up in this poem. And it's in big contrast. How do I say contrast? Contrast with desire. And this is really going to be fascinating. I think one of the things I'm going to try and develop today and other days is how different these people are from modern people. I mean, they're very similar, because that's why we can read it and really enjoy this poem. But would a modern person see their duty as more important than their desire? I don't think so, and we'll get to that. And because in a certain sense, the modern person, like, we have a duty to follow our desire. That's really, and I'm a modern person, so I think that's kind of true in a certain sense. I mean, I think duty is good too. But yeah, so let's get into this. Let's look at some scenes here in book 1, and let's start at the beginning. And I'm gonna make it a little bigger here. And this translation by Fagles, Robert Fagles, labels this chapter Safe Haven After Storm. Wars and demand I sing, in exile driven on by fate. He was the first to flee the coast of Troy, destined to reach Lavinian shores and Italian soil. Yet many blows he took on land and sea from the gods above, thanks to cruel Juno's relentless rage, and many losses he bore in battle too, before he could found a city, bring his gods to Latium, source of the Latin race, the Alban lords and the high walls of Rome. And so there's a lot of names here, but the basic key concept is you have the beginning of Rome. And so Rome, obviously, is the name of the city. In Latin, it's Roma, like in Italian today. But like you see words like Latium, and you see Alba, and you see Alban, and you see Lavinian. So these are all things that refer to Rome. And sorry, you don't know that, but that's what all these things are referring to. And you have the concept here that Troy is destroyed, and that happens in the Iliad and the Odyssey, or at least it's in the background of the Iliad and the Odyssey. Troy gets destroyed, this great city, which is in what is now Turkey, but it was a Greek-speaking city, and everyone died. The Greeks killed everybody. Well, they enslaved the women and children, but Aeneas escaped with his family. And so Aeneas goes on this 7-year journey, and he's trying to get to Rome. How does he know he's going to found Rome? It never really says it, but I guess he's told by the gods that this is his mission. Continue your people. Keep your people going. Start a new city. This is going to be like the new Troy, this great, high culture, high virtues, high values, and like, you're going to keep that pietas going, that duty, and so that's where all this is driving at. And in this first book, I think there's 12 books in this book, and is where he's gonna crash land because Juno, the goddess Juno, doesn't want him to get there. So she sends a storm, and by the way, it's passionate Juno. So one of the things we'll see is the problems with the passionate people, including the gods and goddesses. But she messes them up, so they crash at Carthage, or near Carthage, which is this new city that was just founded by Dido. And Dido is from Tyre. Tyre is in Lebanon. But she's in a parallel story with Aeneas, because her husband gets killed in Tyre, so she has to flee, and she goes and founds her new city, just like Aeneas had to flee and found his new city. So it's kind of like this match made in heaven to some extent, but it's going to end up badly, just to warn you. And it's sort of, it says that. But let's look here at a couple scenes which are described. This is line 420 and so around there. And I'm going to take another swig of water here. Might need a cough drop. I think my allergy's acting up. Okay, so it's just describing how I think it's her brother, killed her husband so that he could become king, and pretended that he didn't kill him. And then finally, her husband's ghost comes and tells her, and it says, still he mocked her with wicked lies, with empty hopes. But she had a dream one night. The true ghost of her husband, not yet buried, came, and lifting his face, ashen, awesome in death, showed her the cruel altar, the wounds that pierced his chest, and exposed the secret horror that lurked within the house. He urged her on, take flight from our homeland quick, and then he revealed an unknown ancient treasure, an untold weight of silver and gold, a comrade to speed her on her way, etc. So they had this concept, apparently, that when you don't bury the dead properly, their ghost has to kind of wander around. It's actually kind of similar to the story in The Sixth Sense. So anyway, this is not an uncommon idea. And so the ghost goes and tells her, hey, you got to get out of here. Your brother killed me. He's dangerous. And so she goes and she founds Carthage, which is in what is today Libya. And then we see what they say about Aeneas. Because Aeneas has crash landed in near Carthage, and he's taken to Carthage, and she sees him, and she's really attracted to him because she's a widow. And she's, she loved her first husband, but now she sees this new guy, and his story is so similar to hers. They have this connection. It's like, wow, we're so perfect for each other. And Aeneas is telling her his story, and he says, I am Aeneas. Here, I am Aeneas, and there is duty bound. He's always full of duty. I carry aboard my ships the gods of house and home we seize from enemy hands. My fame goes past the skies. I seek my homeland, Italy, born as I am, from highest Jove. So he sees, like, even though he's never been there, he has the sense that his homeland is Italy, and he's born from Jove. He's an ancestor of Jove because his mother's Venus, actually, the goddess Venus. I launched out on the Phrygian sea with 20 ships, my goddess mother marking the way, and followed hard on the course the fates had charted. This is his fate, and these fates are these kind of goddesses that are getting him to follow that fate. A mere 7, battered by wind and waves, survived the worst. I myself am a stranger, utterly at a loss, trekking over this wild Libyan wasteland, forced from Europe, Asia, to an exile. And so, so he's got this mission to found his homeland, even though, how does he know what's his homeland? I guess the gods tell him. It's never totally explained. And this is his duty. So he's got to do everything he can to get there. And so he's stopped here because of the storm. He's got 7 ships left. And as they're showing up here, Aeneas is declaring himself to the Queen Dido, and she's going to get really excited by this because she's going to start falling in love with him, because there's Venus and Cupid, the little love god, is conspiring to get her to love him. And when the Romans and the Greeks talk about the god of love, like hitting you with Cupid's arrow, do they really think that there's this little god flying around hitting us with arrows? Or is it a way of just thinking like that's how love works, that's how desire works, and you just get stuck in like, whoa, all of a sudden you're like totally head over heels in love, and you can't control yourself. Anyway, here's what Aeneas says as he declares himself. Here I am before you, the man you are looking for, Aeneas the Trojan, plucked from Libya's heavy seas. You alone have pitied the long ordeals of Troy, unspeakable, and here you would share your city and your home with us, this remnant left by the Greeks. We, who have drunk deep of each and every disaster land and sea can offer, stripped of everything, now it's past our power to reward you gift for gift, Dido, theirs as well, whoever may survive, of the Dardan people still, strewn over the wide world now. But may the gods, if there are powers who still respect the good and true, if justice still exists on the face of the earth, may they and their own sense of right and wrong bring you your just rewards. What age has been so blessed to give you birth? What noble parents produced so fine a daughter? So he's kind of like, sweet talking her, like, wow, you're a really beautiful woman. You must have really awesome parents, So he's kind of sweet talking her. She's getting interested in him. He's kind of in love with her. So his desire is getting started, and now Dido is going to start falling in love with him. And it says, Tyrian Dido marveled, first at the sight of him, next at all he suffered. Then she said aloud, born of a goddess, even so that what destiny hunts you down through such ordeals? What violence lands you on this frightful coast? Are you that Aeneas whom loving Venus bore to Dardan Anchises on the Simois' banks at Troy? Well, I remember Teucer came to Sidon once, banished from native ground, searching for new realms, and my father Belus helped him. Belus had sacked Cyprus, plundered that rich island, ruled with the victor's hand, etc., etc. So she heard about Troy. For her, Troy is this famous people, this great people who suffered so much, and so like she's interested in them. She's feeling sorry for them. Like this is like a mixture of feeling sad for him, like his family's all been like not all of his family, but like his wife has been killed, just like her husband's been killed. she's feeling so connected to him, and she's like marveled first at the sight of him. So first of all, she likes his looks. She's like, wow, I like this guy. And then she's like, wow, you suffered so much. And so what is going to happen here is what? This is the story theory in progress. I'm trying to get this, sorry, center here. So what Aeneas is going to do for the next couple of books is he's going to tell his story. And he's such a good storyteller that Dido is going to fall in love with him. And so if you're trying to, get someone interested in falling in love with you, tell them a sad story about you, about how much you've suffered. And at least this is Aeneas's dating trick. But it seems to me that there's a lot of human nature here, that this is one way that people get moved. I mean, both in love, but also friendship. I mean, it's not just about, getting people, but yeah. But when we hear these moving stories, and again, here's mythos in progress. So like, this is the story, and she connects, hey, that story's my story. We're the same. We're identical. We have the same identity. You see? So this is going to be a beginning of love, but it's going to end, as I said, in the most horrible disaster. And so let's look at how the gods make this even worse, if I can call it worse. And then we're going to talk about, like, is this story anti-woman or pro-woman? But here, Venus and Cupid, the goddess and god of love, are conspiring. And by the way, Aeneas is the son of Venus, so he's definitely on her side, or she's on his side. And so she gets Aeneas's son Iulus, which is similar to the name Julius. So the idea is that this is the ancestors of Julius Caesar and Caesar Augustus. There, these are the rightful family who should rule Rome. And Iulus, they put him to sleep, and they make Cupid as an imposter of Iulus. And so she says, and with your cunning, forge his appearance. Just one night, no more. Put on the familiar features of the boy that you are, so that the wine flows free at the royal board of, and Dido, lost in joy, cradles you in her lap, caressing, kissing you gently. You can breathe your secret fire into her, poison the queen, and she will never know. So Cupid does this. And is this like, is this like mean? Or is love, this kind of trick that biology plays on us? And this is the kind of debate we can get into it if we'd like to. Like, why do we have this strong sex drive? Is it this trick that biology plays on us just to get us to have babies? But now that we have, technological control over our birth through birth control, we don't need it anymore, except as an entertainment. Anyway, let's get to the story here. Cupid, dressed up as Iulus, making himself look like Iulus. It says, they admire Aeneas's gifts, admire Iulus now, the glowing face of the god and the god's dissembling words, and Helen's gown and the veil adorned with a yellow acanthus border. But above all, tragic Dido, doomed to a plague about to strike, cannot feast her eyes enough, thrilled both by the boy and the gifts he brings. And the more she looks, the more the fire grows. But once he's embraced Aeneas, clung to his neck to sate the deep love of his father, deluded father. Cupid makes for the queen. And so he's going to pour this love into her so she cannot control herself. with Aeneas. And then the other thing that's happening with this mythos is what I tend to keep talking about, which is ritualized story. It's not just the story, it's the ritualized story. They're sitting around a meal with a fire, and they've got music, and they've got wine, and they've got, candlelight, and so as he's about to tell his full story here, to set it up, they've got the music setting it up, and then Iopus, long-haired bard, I guess like me maybe, strikes up his golden lyre, again like me, resounding through the halls. Giant Atlas had been his teacher once, and now he sings the wandering moon and laboring sun eclipsed. Hey, the sun eclipsed yesterday. The roots of the human race and the wild beasts, the source of storms and the lightning bolts on high, Arcturus, the rainy Hyades and the great and little bears, and why the winter suns so rush to bathe themselves in the sea, and what slows down the nights to long lingering crawl. Time and again, the Tyrians burst into applause, and the Trojans took their lead. So Dido, doomed, was lengthening out the night by trading tales as she drank long draughts of love, asking Aeneas question on question, now about Priam, now Hector, what armor Memnon, son of the morning, wore at Troy, how swift were the horses of Diomedes, how strong was Achilles. So these are like these heroes, these kind of like superheroes, like think of the Marvel universe, that or heroes like war heroes, and she's heard about them, even though they're from another country, they're famous, and he's telling her about them, and he knows them, and so she's getting really, really impressed by him. She's really falling in love, and now here's what Dido says. Wait, come, my guest, she urges. Tell us your own story, start to finish. The ambush laid by the Greeks, the pain your people suffered, the wandering you have faced. For now is the 7th summer that has borne you wandering all the lands and seas on earth. So this is the end of book 1, and it's basically setting up the next several books, which are going to be the story of the end of Troy, the destruction of Troy, how they escaped, and all this stuff. So it's going to be a good story. So stay tuned for more on tales of brave Aeneas, and tales of brave Ulysses too, who would have been not an ancestor of Aeneas, but an ancestor in terms of story. Like the story is based on the Odyssey and the Iliad. So let's keep that going.